Sold! Here are the keys to your new home. New beginnings sound exciting. From a new marriage to a new home, having access to legal help comes in handy. With Legal Shield, you can connect with a designated law firm that knows your state laws, helping with prenups, real estate contracts, and even wills and estate planning, starting around $1 a day. Legal Shield. Real lawyers, really affordable. For 10% off your annual subscription, sign up at LegalShield.com today. That's LegalShield.com. Legal Shield does not provide legal representation or advice. See a plan for complete terms.
Hey listeners, this is Peter and welcome back to the History Shorts. Today's episode is brought to you by the Podcast Republic, your ultimate listening app. Discover and subscribe to thousands of podcasts from around the world. Download Podcast Republic today, available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Today on History Shorts. In the Easter holidays of 1856, an 18-year-old chemistry student in London was trying to synthesize quinine. Quinine was the only effective treatment for malaria. It came entirely from the bark of the cinchona tree, grown on plantations in Southeast Asia. The British Empire needed enormous quantities of it. His professor had suggested that if someone could synthesize it artificially, produce it in a laboratory from cheap, available materials, they would change medicine and make a fortune. The 18-year-old was working in a makeshift laboratory in his own bedroom. He failed to synthesize quinine. What he produced instead, in a flask that turned an unexpected dark reddish black, was a purple dye, the first synthetic dye in human history, and the accidental foundation of the modern chemical industry, I should add. Our history brief today returns to some myth versus reality and whether the Wild West was really all that wild. A quick word from our sponsors.
Now I'd like to introduce you to Meaningful Beauty, the famed skincare brand created by iconic supermodel Cindy Crawford. It's her secret to absolutely gorgeous skin. Meaningful Beauty makes powerful and effective skincare simple, and it's loved by millions of women. It's formulated for all ages and all skin tones and types, and it's designed to work as a complete skincare system, leaving your skin feeling soft, smooth, and nourished. I recommend starting with Cindy's full regimen, which contains all 5 of her best-selling products, including the amazing youth-activating Melon Serum. This next-generation serum has the power of melon leaf stem cell technology. It's melon leaf stem cells encapsulated for freshness and released onto the skin to support a visible reduction in the appearance of wrinkles. With thousands of glowing 5-star reviews, why not give it a try? Subscribe today and you can get the amazing Meaningful Beauty system for just $49.95. That includes our introductory 5-piece system, free gifts, free shipping, and a 60-day money-back guarantee. All of that available at meaningfulbeauty.com.
This day in history. On June 20th, 1782, the Continental Congress approved the Great Seal of the United States, including the bald eagle that remains one of the nation's most recognizable symbols. On June 20th, 1837, Victoria ascended to the British throne. Her reign would last more than 63 years and lend its name to an entire era of British history. Story of the day. To understand what Perkin had stumbled onto in his bedroom, we really have to understand 2 other things about Victorian London. The first is coal tar. Victorian cities ran on coal gas, used for street lighting, heating, and cooking across every major British city by the mid-19th century. Coal gas was produced by heating coal in the absence of air, a process that generated enormous quantities of thick, black, foul-smelling byproduct called coal tar. Coal tar was produced in staggering quantities. It was largely useless. It was used to waterproof ropes and timber, spread on roads, or simply dumped. A waste product of industrial civilization that accumulated in gas works and around harbors and along canals in quantities that posed genuine environmental problems. Nobody had found anything useful to do with most of it. The second thing to understand here is the state of chemistry back in 1856. The science of organic chemistry, the study of carbon based compounds, was very young, exciting, and moving quite fast. Chemists were beginning to understand that the complex molecules found in natural substances, such as medicines, dyes, and perfumes, could potentially be synthesized artificially from much simpler chemical building blocks. The implications here were indeed enormous. If you could make medicine in a laboratory, you did not need plantations in Southeast Asia. If you could make dye in a laboratory, you did not need expensive natural sources like indigo plants or dried bodies of any form of insects. The entire supply chain of the natural world could theoretically be replicated in a flask. William Henry Perkin was born in 1838 in London's East End, the son of a builder, a boy of restless curiosity who had fallen in love with chemistry after watching a friend perform experiments that produced beautiful crystalline compounds. He enrolled at the Royal College of Chemistry at 15. His professor was August Wilhelm von Hofmann, one of the leading organic chemists in the world, a German scientist who had been recruited to London and was pushing his students to think about chemistry's industrial possibilities. Hoffman had specifically mentioned quinine. Perkin went home for the Easter holidays in 1856 and set to work in his bedroom laboratory. He was 18 years old. He was trying to synthesize quinine from aniline, a compound that could be derived from coal tar. The chemistry did not work. What he got was not quinine. It was dark, unpromising residue in the bottom of his flask. A less curious person would have washed it out. Perkin dissolved it in alcohol, and it turned a brilliant purple. He dipped a piece of silk in the solution. The silk turned purple as well. And then it stayed purple, color fast, vivid, and resistant to multiple washings. This requires some context to appreciate fully here. In 1856, purple was one of the most expensive and most sought after colors in the world, which we today take for granted. Natural purple dyes came from laboriously collected sources. The Murex sea snail, which produced Tyrian purple and required thousands of mollusks per ounce of dye, or orchil dye, which was expensive and impermanent. Purple was the color of royalty, of wealth, of status, precisely because it was so difficult and expensive to produce. Perkin had just produced it in a bedroom from coal tar in one afternoon. He named it Mauvine, from the French word for the mallow flower, and moved quickly. He patented the discovery at 18. He wrote to a commercial dyer in Perth to test its commercial viability. The dyer wrote back that if the color could be produced cheaply enough, it would be of extremely great value. Perkin went to his father, who was skeptical but supportive. Together, they built a factory on a 6-acre site near the Grand Union Canal, drawing on the cheap and plentiful coal tar from London's gasworks, and thus began producing the world's first synthetic dye commercially in 1857. The fashion industry adopted the color with extraordinary speed. Queen Victoria wore a Mauvine gown to her daughter's wedding in 1858. The Empress Eugenie of France, one of the most influential fashion figures in Europe, declared that the color matched her eyes. Within a year, the color had swept through the fashionable world on both sides of the channel. Punch magazine called it the mauve measles. Perkin was rich before he ever turned 20. But the real significance of what Perkin had done went far beyond a fashionable color. After Perkin's pioneering use of coal tar derivative to make synthetic dyes, coal tar ceased to be a waste product, only good for waterproofing fabric. Other derivatives of coal tar were used in other production, such as the pharmaceutical industry and the development of perfumes. The logic was transformative. If coal tar could produce a purple dye, what else could it produce? Chemists across Britain and Germany set to work on the question, and the answers came rapidly. Alizarin, a red dye previously derived from madder root, was synthesized from coal tar in 1868, destroying the madder industry almost overnight. Indigo, the blue dye that had been one of the most valuable commodities in the global trade, was synthesized in 1880, devastating the indigo plantations of India. Aspirin came from coal tar derivatives in 1897. Saccharin came from the coal tar derivatives in 1879. The first synthetic perfumes came from coal tar derivatives as well. The first synthetic pharmaceuticals came from coal tar derivatives also. The entire modern chemical industry, really, worth trillions of dollars today, producing medicines, dyes, plastics, perfumes, and agricultural chemicals, traces its origins to a flask of black residue in a teenager's bedroom in London in 1856. William Henry Perkin retired from business at just 36. He was a millionaire many times over by then, and spent the rest of his life doing the pure research that he had always loved. He was knighted in 1906, 50 years after his discovery. He died in 1907. The coal tar that Victorian cities had produced as useless waste, dumped in rivers, spread on roads, a nuisance byproduct of the gasworks that lit the streets, had turned out to be one of the most chemically valuable substances on Earth. It just took an 18-year-old boy who failed to make quinine to figure that out. The History Brief. When most people picture the American West, they imagine a place where gunfights erupted daily, outlaws roamed every street, and every town had a showdown waiting to happen. It's the world of saloons, sheriffs, wanted posters, and quick draws at high noon. In other words, it's the Wild West of Hollywood. But how wild was the Wild West really? The answer is both yes and no. So let's start with the myth. Movies and television have taught generations of Americans that frontier towns were essentially lawless war zones. Every cowboy carried a revolver. Every disagreement ended in a shootout. Every town seemed to have its own gang of desperados. In reality, many frontier towns were surprisingly very orderly. Take places like Dodge City or Tombstone. Despite their reputations, these communities often had stricter gun regulations than many American cities do today. Visitors entering town were frequently required to surrender their weapons. Local officials understood that armed, intoxicated cowboys or miners could quickly become a problem, so gun control was often seen as a practical necessity. And those famous gunfights? Well, they happened, but far less often than popular culture suggests. The most famous example, the gunfight at OK Corral, lasted only about 30 seconds. It became legendary precisely because such events were unusual enough to attract enormous attention. Statistically, some frontier towns actually had lower murder rates than many modern American cities do today. Now, that does not mean that the West was peaceful. Far from it. The real violence often occurred away from the towns, in isolated mining camps, along cattle trails, during labor disputes, and in conflicts involving Native Americans, settlers, soldiers, and outlaws. The West was dangerous, not because everyone was constantly shooting at each other on Main Street, but because institutions were still developing. Law enforcement was often limited. Courts could be distant. Vast distances made crime difficult to investigate and punish. And then there was the figures who became legends. People like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, and Wyatt Earp were real people, but their stories told about them were often exaggerated by newspapers, dime novels, and later Hollywood films. The Wild West was one of America's first great media sensations. Even during the 1800s, publishers discovered that tales of shootouts, train robberies, and frontier heroes sold newspapers. The real West became mixed with a fictional West, almost immediately, and that fictional version proved incredibly durable. Today, many people imagine the frontier as a place defined entirely by violence. But most people living there were farmers, merchants, railroad workers, ranchers, teachers, and families, simply trying to build lives in a rapidly changing region. In other words, the West was often more about hard work than gunfights. So, what's the reality? Well, Wild West wasn't as wild as the movies suggest, but it wasn't tame either. It was a complex place where myth and reality became intertwined almost from the very beginning. And perhaps that's why the legend survives. Because the Wild West isn't just a historical period, it's one of America's most enduring stories, a place where fact, fiction, and national identity all rode together into the sunset. Not to sound too dramatic. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today and helping make this little show such a mighty success. If you're enjoying this show and would like to help with its production, you can always donate a few dollars at buymeacoffee.com or become a Patreon member to enjoy these episodes ad free. Both of those links can be found on our website at www.historyshortspodcast.com. I also hope you guys check out our YouTube channel where we have different videos and series that are not part of this main feed. Have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you all again tomorrow.